The mansion tax is all over the news, but how much do you actually know about it? Is it a leveling of the playing field where the richest people in Chicago will finally pay their fair share to drive social causes or knock off some of this deficit that we have in Chicago? Or is it an undue burden on homeowners set to cause a drastic economic impact on the city of Chicago? In this video, we're taking a deeper dive into the Bring Chicago Home campaign, better known as the mansion tax. I'm Matt Thomas with Baird & Warner Real Estate in Chicago. I help buyers, sellers, and investors make smarter real estate decisions in Chicagoland every single day. Thank you for watching this video. If you find it useful, please share it with somebody else who will get knowledge out of the video. Like it because that helps this channel so much. I appreciate you in every single way. Jumping right in. Today, we're talking about the mansion tax. This is a proposal spearheaded by Mayor Johnson introducing a graduated tax to sales over $1 million in Chicagoland. The tax rate would increase depending on the property, with the highest rate being roughly 3% on the very high end of the market. Now, I do want to make something clear right out the gate. A lot of content out there right now seems to be talking about this as if it's already taken effect. It hasn't. This is a proposal that, as of this week, September 14th, was put in front of the City Council for review by Mayor Johnson, but there are many hurdles and loopholes that it needs to go through before it's actually passed, if it passes, into order. The earliest that we're going to see any sort of change with the proposed mansion tax or any sort of change to transfer taxes at all would be 2024. This has to go to the City Council. It's got to be put to a vote next March. 2024 is a realistic early timeline for when these changes we're talking about could actually go into effect. Breaking down the specifics on this, right now in Chicago, there's a 0.75% real estate transfer tax on the sale of a property. This proposal would change that to a graduated tax depending on the sale price of the property. So for properties under $1 million, that transfer tax would be 0.6%. For properties over $1 million, between $1 and $1.5 million, it would be a 2% tax rate. For properties valued over $1.5 million, it would be a 3% tax rate. So let's look at this. If you're selling a property at $1 million, right at $1 million, you're actually getting a tax break in this. This would be about a $1,500 tax cut because you're only paying 0.6% versus the 0.75% that exists today. But as you get more expensive, you go to that $1.5 million category. Now all of a sudden you're paying $4,750 more than you would have to close under the previous tax rate. And let's say you're selling a $2 million house, that's a $16,000 tax increase under this new proposed plan. Obviously, these increases are significant, and that's why proponents of the plan point to the fact that they think it could raise up to $160 million annually, which is supposed to be used to fund social projects, infrastructure projects, and ultimately to pay off the large deficit that Chicago has. Right now, this is sitting with the Rules Committee. It's being discussed. It's likely we're going to hear whether or not it can proceed in a couple of weeks. It's important to remember that a change to the tax code would actually be a change in Illinois law. So there's going to be a lengthy review on this proposal to make sure that it is within alignment of Illinois constitutional law before it proceeds to any sort of approval with the Chicago City Council, or certainly before it proceeds to an actual vote next spring. If it is approved, and I will say right now it looks like it will be at least approved to proceed forward at this point, it will likely be on the ballot come March, which means it could take effect in 2024. This proposal has been met with, I'll call it, mixed reactions. As I started the video with, some people believe this is a level setting of the playing field that is long overdue in the Chicago marketplace. We're not the first city to propose this idea, and we're certainly not the first to enact it. Places like Los Angeles, places like New York City have had mansion taxes for a while now, in some cases several years. So people look at this as a way to tax those that can afford it and use that money to pay for, really ultimately what this is covering is the huge budgetary deficit that Chicago has. And this is in some way trying to alleviate the tension from that deficit. On the flip side, people argue that this puts a huge burden on home sellers, particularly because we have an entire generation of people getting ready to retire. Many of them are banking on the sale of their home or homes, plural, in order to have money for retirement. And if the tax implications go through the roof on those properties, that could drastically impact many working Chicagoans. Not only that, but we've seen in Los Angeles, in New York City, when the mansion taxes were passed, it does have an impact on the high end of the market. Sales tend to slow down. There tends to be less interest in moving to a city where the high earners are going to be taxed the highest. And here in Chicago, we've already seen some major companies announce that they're leaving Chicago, going for more tax-friendly grounds. So the combination of taxing ultra-high earners and seeing some of the ultra-high earner companies leave the city is kind of a double whammy for the economy. In my opinion, I agree that some relief on the transfer taxes under $1 million specifically is probably needed because it is expensive to sell a property in Chicago. It just is. That said, I don't know that the proposed graduated transfer tax or mansion tax really addresses the core of the issue that we're talking about. Chicago's biggest contributor to the deficit in our budget is our pension fund. On paper, Chicago's pension system is one of the more rewarding in the country. We beat many state and local government programs comparatively. That said, our pension program is consistently overfunded, and through the years, it's created a huge delta in the money promised versus the money available. Right now, Chicago's operating budget for 2023, feeding the pension fund is 25% of the budget. So a quarter of everything that we spend is going just to pay off the pension deficit that does exist. And as of today, the pension deficit, meaning the difference in what is owed and the actual money that we have as a city to pay that, is $35 billion. Billion with a B. Respectfully, $160 million a year is not even a drop in the bucket. And it's not addressing the core problem, which is the city's pension program. So while I agree that some sort of reform is likely needed on the sub-$1 million tax transfer program, I don't necessarily agree that this mansion tax or proposed mansion tax is the right approach to recoup that money or really make an impact, a tangible impact on the city's deficit. The reality is that if we raise taxes on the highest earners, we're going to make Chicago a less attractive city for them to come to. We're already seeing big companies, Boeing, we've seen Tyson, we saw Citadel, all announcing their departure from Chicagoland, many of them citing rising taxes as one of the reasons they're leaving. If we continue to push that direction, we may very well create some negative market dynamics in the housing market, which will stress out the Chicago local economy. So what happens now? The Rules Committee is going to vote. They're reviewing and making sure that this doesn't violate the Illinois Constitution, which, as best experts can tell, it doesn't. So it probably will, in some form or fashion, get to a vote in the coming months and be on the ballot next spring. Only Chicagoans can decide if the mansion tax will pass. Is it a leveling of the playing field where the wealthy finally pay their share, or is it an undue burden on homeowners who are already stretched thin to try and make profit? Only you can decide. Hopefully this video was helpful. Please like and share if it was. Subscribe if you haven't already. I'm trying to release helpful Chicago real estate content as often as possible. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.